This is a certified hood classic.
Here we go again, my boys. Hey, what's good with y'all, man? It's your boy Quizzy, man. I'm back with another video, man. I just wanted to say, man, I appreciate y'all. I think that that Futurama video that we posted, I think that got some good traction. I just wanted to post that video because, you know, I know a lot of people like Futurama, and, you know, this cartoon channel, man. We watch cartoon, anime, we just doing all type of lit stuff over it. And this is the new season that I think it would be interesting for us to see about it, all right? Now, we are getting ready to watch this video. It says Futurama is back, and it's actually good. I want to see what my boy Johnny got to say about this, man. Y'all do your boy a favor, hit the like button, go down below, subscribe to your boy, and if you want to see full videos over on the Patreon, make sure you click the link in the description because we watching South Park, Futurama, Venture Bros, man. We watching all kinds of things over there, all right?
Folks, it's actually here. Nearly 10 years after the previous series finale, Futurama has returned with a brand new episode titled The Impossible Stream. After starting its life on Fox, moving direct to DVD for a few movies, and then landing on cable at Comedy Central, this new season of Futurama is dropping on Hulu to likely live out the rest of its days on streaming, or Disney Plus outside the US. But how was the latest revival's premiere?
Oh, I forgot. Disney owns Hulu, bro. Disney just owns every fucking thing. Disney probably owns me and you, boy.
Did it live up to the hype? Did it fall into some of the same pitfalls that the previous era did? Well, there's a ton to dig into and go over, so let's get into it. Welcome back.
And I wanted to make sure, I actually saw this video beforehand, but I wanted to make sure that I watched the first episode, which is available on the channel. We did a reaction to it. But before we got into this, I want to make sure that I watched the first episode before we got into this, just because it'd be spoilers and stuff.
Back
to the world of tomorrow.
Hey, also, if you want more Futurama analysis outside of this breakdown, make sure to check out my podcast, Cartoons That Curse. Toonerific Tariq and I just wrapped up covering the last couple of seasons of the Comedy Central run, and we'll be covering this newest season weekly, episode by episode. So go check it out.
Go check that out, man.
Okay, so there is obviously so much to talk about with this premiere, but right off the bat, I want to say that after being very apprehensive about the show returning, I'm very happy with this premiere. Not only did I find it very funny, but the ways it followed up the previous finale, as well as other Futurama storylines, were incredibly satisfying. I do think people might find the Fulu storyline a little too on the nose. It does feel like they really laid it on thick with the revival jokes, but after 10 years, I personally don't mind it, especially because I just found those jokes to be funny. But let's start getting into the details because I have so much I want to talk about.
Cool, real quick. So look, before we get started, I agree with him. If y'all go watch the reaction that I did, honestly, it's like I get it. I get the Hulu jokes. You know, I get it that it's supposed to be hinting towards Hulu, and that's the funny thing. I do, however, like the fact that they kind of address the situation about the show being canceled in a very funny way. I like that. I like the fact that they talked about, like, oh man, you know, this cable won't pick these shows up, so streaming networks will pick these shows up. I like stuff like that. I did like that. I did enjoy it, especially when I rewatched it and edited, because, you know, when I'm editing, I pick up a lot of things that I don't normally pick up in the reaction. I hate doing that. I pick up jokes that, like, y'all go down in there and y'all tell me down in the comments, and I'll be like, I know I missed it. You know what I'm saying? I see it. I see that I missed that joke. But like I said, I like that. The only thing that I didn't want is, I'm like, please don't just start like dropping Hulu in this, you know, in this new season. Like, don't start dropping Hulu hints all over the place. That's just getting lame.
And spoilers ahead, obviously. First up, the show has new title cards when it starts now, beginning with Hulu Presents, a Hulu original, a 20th century television animation production, which makes sense. Even shows that transition to being streaming originals tend to be branded that way. But I actually like the mystery vibes and score behind these new title cards. And the episode begins directly following up the events of Meanwhile, which was a major requirement for me. This also makes sense. They directly addressed the end of Into the Wild Green Yonder in the first Comedy Central episode, Rebirth, but Meanwhile's ending left a little bit more room for them to ignore it if they wanted to. This episode opens on the world still being frozen from the events of the previous finale, with the professor explaining the events from his point of view at the end of that last episode.
Professor's lab notes, final entry. Time has been frozen for an unknown length of time.
We see the events of the finale as we remember them, with the now iconic "wanna go around again" line, and those events then transition into the present with our first of many winks to the revival effort.
Did someone switch the universe off and on? It feels like we got rebooted.
This is pretty classic for
I told you I
Futurama.
like
They
that.
referenced their first cancellation in Bender's Big Score and the second in Rebirth with their opening sequences, though this episode definitely makes a lot more jokes about it throughout the episode than either of those last ones. But
Sure, right.
Futurama also kind of invented revivals, so I give it a pass. But let's talk about this new intro sequence. They've
That's cool.
actually made changes. For one, the Hulu Rama logo that we saw from the trailers that transitions to Futurama is actually in the titles for the
Wow, I didn't. You know what's crazy? I didn't even notice that. I didn't. I honestly, like, something in my head, because we're watching full episodes of Futurama over on the Patreon, bro. Shameless plug. But I mean, honestly, with that, when me seeing that that title, something in my head said this is off, not in a bad way, but I was just like looking at the title and I'm like, something like the F doesn't flip around that fast. Like, but I couldn't put my finger on
this
it.
run, which will
That's
probably be
interesting.
weird for people watching on Disney Plus, but oh well. And our first title caption is Avenged in bloody red letters, a direct follow-up to the caption from the previous finale, which said Avenge Us in the same font. For the intro
Heavens.
sequence differences, there are actually a few changes. The first is a totally blink and you'll miss it thing. As we zoom into New York, you can now see the Vampire State Building on the right side, which made its one
Okay.
and only appearance in the previous series finale. Meanwhile, with Fry jumping off of it. In this first little location, you can now see the Nimbus flying in the background on the top left of the screen.
Oh,
As we
okay.
fly to the next location, we can now see the Momco building in the background, a major skyline
Okay,
change. This is
cool.
actually kind of an interesting one. We first see Mom's skyscraper in a fishful of dollars with a similar but slightly different design to this building, labeled Mom's Friendly Robot Company. They seemed to use this design in the Fox era and then transition to this newer design in the Comedy Central run.
Nice,
This is pretty
okay.
inconsequential, but the characters flying
like
through the
that.
tubes have changed as well, Kif being a notable addition, and you can also see 3 Omicronian ships flying overhead just before it transitions again.
That must be them weird ass little, ugly ass little aliens.
In the final transition, we can now see Bender dangling from the Planet Express ship, presumably singing, a reference to the second episode of the entire series, The Series Has Landed. And
Right.
the last visual
remember
change
that.
I've noticed is that in the final shot with the giant screen, you can now see the Robot Arms apartments on the left side. Of course, where Fry and Bender have lived for almost the entire series. But the
Right.
most important thing is that the full title sequence has returned. During the Comedy Central era, they almost always cut the title sequence short, including removing the old cartoon clips from the screen at the end. But to me, the biggest
Okay.
sin was always removing this final music cue from the theme song.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm like, I remember that shit.
The episode properly starts by actually addressing the 10-year time jump, but explaining it away with the massive disruption in time from Meanwhile, which I think was a smart move. It would have felt weird if the crew had just been on adventures for the past 10 years that we had never
Right.
seen, but it also gives them an excuse to comedically explain away their canonical ages having any importance.
Did we
Right.
get older? Younger? Science holds no answers.
But I love how this
Look at the
transition
janitor.
and the revelation that they're now in the year 3023 leads to the episode premise. And Fry basically has an existential crisis about how long he's been in the future, deciding to set a goal for himself. I also love that the episode is about Leela choosing to support Fry's goal.
Yeah, man, that's his girl, man. But I didn't like that there were a few girlfriend references in there, but I just expected a little bit more. But she was very supportive, though. And that is a quality of somebody who loves you, you know.
No
what I'm
matter
saying?
how stupid it is. It's nice that they're pretty firmly making Fry and Leela's relationship a priority, even in this mostly unrelated plot. Some good reassurance to the audience that they'll handle them well in the revival. Also, let's take a look at this shot of Fry when he sets his initial goal to watch every TV show ever. This is the funniest off-model pose I've ever seen, and I kind of love it. I'm not going to list them
Really?
all, but the quick scroll down the list of future TV shows has some very funny little details in there. There are
Yeah.
literally 66 TV show titles on the list, and you should definitely pause and read them all. Some of my favorites are Mets vs. Godzilla, Disenchantment, the first ever Futurama reference to Groening's newest show, Disenchantment,
I like
Alien
that he
vs.
paid
Predator vs.
attention to
Bluey, Back to the Present, too many to name really. There's really funny stuff in there. But man, possibly my biggest laugh in the entire episode is the latest Scary Door, or the Scary Mirror, as they acknowledge the rise of Black Mirror as our modern Twilight Zone equivalent.
What was once a
Okay.
creepy story about a book is now about an e-reader that's too greasy to hold.
Fry ends up deciding to try and binge all my circuits, and they sort of use it as a stand-in for Futurama itself in their meta commentary here.
Which final season? They got canceled like 3 or 4 times.
It was so great to see more clips of All My Circuits. Those have always been a highlight of the series for me, and the clips we see in this episode are so funny.
Calculon, But you weren't due back from the time travel convention until...
Yesterday?
They were freaks though, bro. Them little robots in there, they were some freaky ass people.
But I'm glad that they found
Well,
a way
they're
to
not people, they're
futurize the
robots.
concept of Fry binging a show, fitting him into a still suit, a Dune reference, that sustains him while he binges for basically an entire year. It would have kind of been boring if it was just about Fry sitting on the couch watching all my circuits. And
Right.
they find a fun way to turn this into a future dilemma as well, with Fry's consciousness being tied to his binge, meaning if the series ends before it untangles, he will die. The solution,
shit.
again, pretty on the nose, to go to Hulu and get them to start producing more episodes so that his binge doesn't stop. This is definitely the most meta they've gone with a return episode, referencing the cancellation and revival so often, but personally I don't mind it. I think for the most part the jokes are very funny, and it also ties into enough aspects of the show's history to make it a fun ride.
I think that's why we allowed it to just be what it was. Like, the fact that they tied it in so well, I think that's like, okay, they tied it in good. They talked about the writers, you know, they were talking about the cancellation, and I feel like that was enough for me to say, okay, if Hulu brought them back, if Disney brought them back or whatever, Hulu, Disney, whatever. Now Disney owns Hulu, so if they brought them back, I would expect them to have a few, dropping a few hints, you know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, look, we brought them back, so look, y'all, we gonna promote our shit. I got it. I just don't want to see it throughout the whole season, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, always see it like them having unnecessary lines like, oh man, what you doing? Just watching some Hulu. It's gonna get old.
The Hulu executives are even the same execubots we saw in Bender Should Not Be Allowed on Television and other television-related episodes like Calculon 2.0. And they directly address a majorly important plot point from the Comedy Central era to make this actually make sense.
There's one teensy hitch. You know the star of the show, Calculon? He's dead.
I'm so glad this wasn't something they ignored, and I hope it's a sign that they won't ignore much else continuity-wise while moving through this new era.
Yeah,
this truly
right.
just felt
I
like
can
it
see
picked
that.
up exactly where the show left off. At the end of Calculon 2.0, the robot devil was just fed up with Calculon. So he's, of course, incredibly eager to send him back to Earth.
Oh,
And that's why he said no backsies. Okay, I get it.
oh, glorious rapture. To return to the draped proscenium once more.
Will you shut up and get into the resurrection cannon?
I also love that we get a Dan Castellaneta cameo here for the Robot Devil. Such a great character. Glad they got him in the premiere. And we also get the return of Slurms Mackenzie, though he
Right.
does not seem to be doing well.
No,
and I
he's
think
not.
they escalate things pretty effectively here. Fry starts watching at 2 times speed, which means that they have to basically just make new All My Circuits episodes perpetually to keep them alive, which completely burns out the writers, and so they replace them all with Bender. And actually, this is a perfect time to take a little break to talk about those writers. Futurama is actually one of the few animated shows that's covered by the WGA, which is on strike alongside SAG-AFTRA at the moment. If you're a fan of Futurama or really any TV or films at all, it's important to show support for these striking workers, and here's
Okay.
exactly why.
Before he says that, I'm gonna say I agree. I agree with them. All right. People in Hollywood needs to be paid, and Disney and other shows are putting out new things about AI. Start writing some of these shows. We don't want that, guys. Look, we want to keep people working. All right, keep people working. They want to give away all our jobs. I know I sound like the nigga out South Park. Yes, nigga, they taking jobs, bro.
When a TV show is produced, the studios that produce it continue to profit off of that show, generally by selling its rights to TV networks for reruns or to streaming services to be hosted. Outside of streaming, there's something called residuals. This means that when a show continues to make money, the people who helped create that show in the first place share in that profit, which only makes sense. It's only fair. Why shouldn't the people who made these things profit from the continued revenue created by their work? Unfortunately for streaming media, residuals barely exist at all, with actors and writers sometimes getting checks for mere pennies when their shows are bought and sold. With the entire industry shifting to streaming in the past few years, this is not acceptable or sustainable. The creators deserve to share in those profits. This is not a matter of rich people fighting over money. The majority of writers and actors can barely make ends meet, and these residual checks have previously made these careers sustainable. This is no longer the case. The problem is that the the revenue exists. These shows are actively, persistently creating revenue, and the greedy CEOs of these studios are keeping it for themselves and hauling in massive bonuses for millions of dollars.
I like the way that he's explaining that. That was a very, very good way of explaining that. And I know a lot of people might not understand, but you got to understand this, bro. A lot of times when you look at the big networks and you say, oh man, it's Hulu, or I'm just using them as an example, you know what I'm saying? It's Hulu. They're great. They got they got millions and billions of dollars. Okay, that's great. When you look at Disney, they got trillions of dollars. That's great. But you got to understand that people, just because Disney itself has trillions of dollars and the CEOs does and the stockholders, they make money, doesn't mean that the people that are managers of the shop make money. The managers of the studio make money. Like, you know, the writers and stuff like that, you know, they tried their best to skimp out on people. And I'm not saying, personally, this is not defamation of character, you know what I'm saying, any of these companies. I'm just saying, like, you got to understand, Hollywood is a tough place, bro. And these streaming services is nothing but Hollywood 2.0, bro.
It's deplorable behavior. There are a lot of other issues at stake in these strikes as well, and I'll talk about more of them in future videos. But while I'm talking about this series, I want to do my part to show my support for the creatives who made them possible. I'll be posting links in the description for places you can donate to help support the striking workers. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to Futurama. Okay, I also loved how this room of writers are just character models for a ton of the current Futurama writers. This guy on the left is clearly designed after Patrick Verone. You've got Eric Horsted's head right here. This head on the floor is one of the new writers, Shireen Najafi, who I have actually worked with in the past. She's great and very funny. Over here we've got two other new writers, Cody Ziegler, and lastly Ariel Ladenson, who hilariously is actually wearing the same outfit as in her Instagram profile picture. I had to look her up to figure out who this was, but I love that attention to detail, and I think it's just fun to acknowledge the real world writers room of Futurama here. So All My Circuits ends up getting canceled because they were making it too fast with a robot writer, and I really liked the way that they tried to ease Fry out of his binge by transitioning the show into a synced up live performance. It's a cool concept. Unfortunately, it goes terribly wrong. They end up destroying Fry's binge chair, with everyone believing that Fry is dead.
He's dead! I killed him by encouraging his hopes and dreams. How could I have been so stupid?
Obviously, Fry didn't die, and this was immediately revealed, but it is nice to just see them double down on Leela's love for Fry with her devastation at the thought of losing him. Again,
I don't know, I never seen a tear come from that big ass eye.
It continues to encourage me that they'll handle their relationship properly in this run. There's also a little tag where Fry talks to a panel at the White House that includes Nixon, where they talk about the dangers of streaming TV, and it seems like they're really just trying to reassure the audience that this revival was made with care.
Don't reboot a show if the quality isn't gonna be there.
Which is, again, on the nose, but personally I think the episode delivers, even when some of the episodes in the previous run of the series perhaps didn't deliver on that quality. I really can't tell you how nervous I was about this show coming back, but honestly, the first time watching this premiere episode, I almost felt giddy. They did so much that I hoped they would. They directly followed up Meanwhile in a way that both fit the storyline and addressed the time jump between seasons. They didn't ignore status quo shifts like Fry and Leela's relationship or Calculon's death, and most importantly, it was funny. I think the one episode we have that can be directly compared to this one is Rebirth, the very first episode of the Comedy Central era. Both followed up episodes that were meant to be finales. Rebirth used a little bit more of a metaphorical storyline with the characters literally being reborn, while the Impossible Stream did a bit more of a meta storyline with the All My Circuits reboot. But personally, I like the Impossible Stream a lot more than Rebirth and Execution, and honestly, more than a lot of episodes in the Comedy Central era. In my opinion, this is a much stronger start, especially after a 10-year gap. There are some stories that I absolutely love from the 52 Comedy Central era episodes, but they had some very frustrating writing tendencies. The show has always had serialized elements, but it felt like they were very intent on maintaining the status quo in its episodic nature, especially when it came to things like character relationships. And in doing so, it made some of my favorite characters do super unlikable things that would have been fine earlier in the show, but come across as heartless so deep into this run. The way Amy treats Kif in episodes like Proposition Infinity come to mind. One thing that was interesting about the meta dialogue in this episode was this line.
How about picking up All My Circuits for 20 episodes?
With an option for 20 more.
Maybe a movie.
And I think this definitely gives us insight into the possibilities of what we'll see from Futurama moving forward.
Maybe
We've already got that
hopefully.
20 episode pickup. It sounds like there's a major possibility for another 20 on the back end of this order, something I fully expect to happen. But the possibility of a movie is what really excites me. Look, I know it's very unlikely that we'll get a theatrically released Futurama movie, but that is still
a Netflix. I said Netflix. A Hulu original movie. That be pretty dope.
My dream. Not a movie that's actually 4 episodes smashed together like the DVD movies, but a big, properly structured, ambitious Futurama movie. We'll see. A man can dream, right? Cue
Right.
man can dream clip. Next week is the episode titled Children of a Lesser Bog, and the description on Hulu is that Kif and Amy's kids emerge from an alien swamp. This is following up the promise made in Kif Gets Knocked Up a Notch 20 years ago, and this is the kind of potentially status quo shifting story that really excites me. It is surreal to be covering new Futurama on this channel. This is a show that has meant so much to me for most of my life, and while I've been nervous about the show's return, I'm really excited to keep talking about these new episodes and discuss them with all of you.
That's what's up, man. Hey, shout out to my boy, man. Shout out to my boy Johnny, bro. I'm a tag him in the title so that way y'all can click on his page and y'all can actually watch this over there. But man, I think he did a very, very, very good job at explaining the first episode. Like I said, if you want to see it, you can go over there and check my reaction out on the page, Quizzy on Demand. But I really, really, really think that they're headed to somewhere good with this reboot. I really do. I really think that they're headed somewhere good with this reboot. And then it was good quality, and I'm not talking about how it looks. It looks amazing. It was great quality. Excuse me. It was good writing. I like how everything tied in. It flowed nice. And I'm interested to see where it's gonna go, man. So y'all let me know. Should we do a reaction to it over here, man? Let your boy know. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you go down below and subscribe to your boy if you're new. I love y'all, man. See y'all in the next video.